are focused than most kids of your age, of that age.
Yeah, that's probably, for some people, they'd probably say what I ended up doing and the way I functioned during college and high school, I probably, to them, didn't have as much fun as what people think fun is. But for me, to this day, working on great pieces of music is a joy for me. And for some people, it was like going out to, smoke some weed. I had trouble doing that in college because it would wreck my voice. It's not like I didn't want to. I sort of did once in a while. But you know what I mean? It's like, so that interest in structure was never a problem for me. And it's a good thing.
So what was it like? What was the high school Jayne Siemens like? You mentioned the focus, and maybe you didn't want to do some of the things that other people did, and you obviously were performing in all the shows, and I've seen photos, and obviously it was an accomplished high school as far as things were concerned. So being a railroader, what was a railer?
Oh, yeah, railers. I had 4 music classes my senior year of high school. That was how lucky we were to be able to do that. I don't think you can do that anymore. It's really unfortunate. So it was exceptional there. Our orchestra and band leader of our music program, he wrote jazz charts for people like Clark Terry, Buddy Guy. I mean, it's amazing. Sitting in Newton, Kansas. So we had excellent instruction. But, I would say in high school, I had great friends, and they're friends of mine to this day. A lot of people probably kind of wondered what she was up to because I sort of tried to stay away from the cliques. But I liked people from all over, people throughout my high school. And I probably got to be friends with most of the people, that were in the music program. And we've stayed friends since then.
But as a young teenager, you had a sister who was about to be college age and or then was college age. So you had some rather grown-up experiences for a young teenager.
I see where you're going here. Yeah, Emily, it was great because when I was 7th grade, she was already at KU. And so we had some times where my mom, I don't know how this ever happened, actually. She dropped me off, and I would just end up staying the weekend with Emily. And how do I put this? She was in the, early 70s era where there was a lot of fun going on. So I was sort of watched, but not too far from the reality of what was going on. We had a blast, and I got to know, her boyfriend and all the people she hung out with. So I did party in 7th grade with my sister. So I can have fun.
Yes, yes, indeed. At what point in high school, in doing all these shows and doing leads and being accomplished in that area, did you have an idea that where this journey was going to go as far as college is concerned, and that at what point did you really absolutely realize that this was a vocation you were going to make?
Well, I don't think I ever didn't think I was, but what was really great is Gary Fletcher, the man I mentioned, ran our music program, who wrote these great jazz charts, fabulous musician. I remember he left us our junior year. It was a crushing blow to me because I'd known him since 4th grade. And he decided to go on to other things. But I remember before he left, because he knew how devastated I was, he handed me my first opera recording, a personal recording with Joan Sutherland on it. And he was giving me his blessing that he thought that it was probably wise for me to consider pursuing this. And I also went to Interlochen Arts Academy in the summer for 2 summers. And that opened up to international students from all over the world that were interested in the same things I were. One of my best friends there is a Tony Award winner, Victoria Clark. And that was a tremendous experience. I've been friends with many of the people that I met there for life. And it really opened doors.
I've been there. There's people may not know listening to this, and some will, it's a very highly accomplished people go there. I mean, you just can't up and go. Just tell me a little bit more about that experience over those couple of summers.
Well, you have to audition. Now, it's it's now online, but it used to be where you would send in a cassette tape, which took way longer for them to assess who was going to get in or not. So, and it was also, you were assessed by your grades and you had references already. So there was that expectation. I was in the operetta program and also in the musical theater program. I was a clarinetist too, and I unfortunately couldn't do it all. I brought it with me, but it kind of sat there because I ended up focusing on that. We worked with the most phenomenal people in this gorgeous outdoor setting. Everybody was in cabins. The boys were on one side, the girls were on the other. And it was just an eye-opening experience of what the potential is. I remember walking down to Kresge Auditorium, which is their big outdoor auditorium where all the operettas were performed. For the first time walking through, nobody was there, and I was listening to this violist playing a concerto by herself on the stage. I'm like, oh my God, I've never heard anything so great. She was a junior in high school. Amy Branfenbrenner, she ended up going on to create a number of very well-known string quartets and has played throughout the world. And her brother, who's a really good friend of mine, Mark, is with the Lyric Opera of Chicago Orchestra, where I ended up. These people are all friends to this day. And so it was a lightning rod. And the energy was so palpable that you couldn't help but try to be your best.
When it came time to go off to college, what was the decision-making process like for you, and what were the options that you looked at?
You know, I looked at a number of Northwestern, University of North Carolina School of the Fine Arts, Boston University, Michigan. What else? I did look at Juilliard. So, you know, there was Michigan has a top music school there. I ended up going to BU my first year because I think I liked the disco dancing that was going on there as much as... Should I say that? I did have fun. See, I did have fun. It was the disco era. I was singing opera and then I was dancing disco at night. I went to BU my first year, wasn't in love with my voice teacher, and it ended up transferring to Michigan. I knew a lot of the teachers at Michigan because I'd gone to Interlochen up in northern Michigan. So that's where I ended up getting my degree.
How difficult a decision was it to change, or during the course of that year at Boston University, which becomes ironic later on since I was around there then, was the circumstance such that really as the year went on, you kind of realized that this was going to be one and done?
You know, I had this contralto voice teacher, Mary Davenport, and she was an amazing woman, really well-known singer in opera, but I couldn't relate to her technique. And in opera, this is the tricky part about making decisions. You know, if I'd gone into musical theater, there's voice technique, but that's more on the acting side. And I'd done so much theater, I really got excited about working on my vocal technique. And I didn't quite think she understood a higher voice because I have a really high soprano voice. And so who am I to say? But it was really important for me to find the right person to click with.
When you went to Michigan, did it feel like, okay, this is the right thing?
Absolutely. It was immediately the right thing. A good friend of mine who was at BU with me, transferred with me, John Murrell, who had gone to New Trier High School, which everyone knows is extraordinarily famous high school. Right. Charlton Heston went there,
John
Rock
Belushi
Hudson, John Belushi.
Right.
What's her face from? Oh my God, can't say her name. I'll say it in a minute. So I met all these great talents from New Trier, and three of those guys wrote an original musical while I was at Michigan. And so the first semester I was there, they cast me as the lead in that. So I just immediately connected with amazing talent there, and I enjoyed my voice teacher. She was a tough, really well-known Czechoslovakian voice teacher. They are what they are. She was really good, but she was really tough. But that's the way the music business is.
Well, I've told this story a million times. We went back for a reunion a few years ago for the music school, and we went to a football game. They had tickets for the football game. I was part of it, and I attended that game at the Big House, iconic football palace of college football. and that was the first game I had ever been there, and it was the second game you had ever been at Michigan, which I guess describes the focus of your world there.
Okay, so here was the deal. We had all our rehearsals for Gilbert and Sullivan operettas were in a building right next to the stadium, and inevitably we'd have rehearsals that we had to get to just as people were leaving the stadium. It was always swimming uphill when it had to do with what was going on in sports at Michigan. But I'd venture to say their music program, there's so many people on Broadway from Michigan now. They had a Michigan on Broadway show that a friend of mine conducted a couple years ago. So I would say it's pretty balanced now.
That's true. And obviously you had great experiences there. And I don't know whether it was your trip to Europe earlier, but you wanted to go to graduate school and you went to one of the best in the world.
Well, what I did is I finished at Michigan, and I took a couple years as a starving artist at New York for a few years, and did some singing, did concerts there, worked at a wholesale children's clothing firm called Her Majesty Industries, which I loved actually. But I felt like in opera you have to keep your voice maturing, and again I had this thing about the UK, so I had an opportunity to get a Fulbright to the Guildhall School of Music and Drama in London.
How many years after undergrad did you go to London?
It was 3.
Okay.
And it was tremendous. Got my master's in opera performance there. And Guildhall is where many of the well-known Orlando Bloom, all the major, English actors, not all, but many of them have gone there. So it was tremendous because even though I was in the opera program, I was around a lot of these amazing theater actors, and we got to take part in those classes as well. It was fantastic. It was right in the middle of downtown London, really close to St. Paul's.
Was that in any way an intimidating experience? I mean, although you'd been in New York for 3 years, so maybe not.
It was an interesting thing. I must like that life. It's rather lonely because it's so competitive. It's not like you're there to party with everybody and just have a good social time, even though to this day,
right.
In fact, I'm doing a concert with one of my dear friends who I sang with there in a month where she lives in Halifax. So that gives you an idea how close you get to people, even though you're only there for 3 years. It was an amazing experience. Intimidated. I think maybe so, because the higher up you get, the more competition there is, and the better everyone's getting. And so you have to keep your game up.
Immediately after you graduate from Guildhall or get your master's, whatever that, I don't know if that's called graduation because I didn't get my master's. I never contemplated getting a master's. What did you do immediately after that?
I sang in Austria and Switzerland and Germany for a time. A lot of American singers kind of jump over there. We literally had auditions for agents, and they had no warm-up rooms, and you were standing in the middle of a park in Germany and singing opera, and people would walk by and talk to you. It was the most bizarre experience, but it was a great experience because the European houses are smaller, and there's such a love for opera and classical music there. It was a tremendous experience.
How long did you do that before you returned to the States?
Just a few years.
A few? A couple? You want to count for me?
Well, I can't. It's been so long. I guess 3. I want to say 2 or 3.
What was the decision-making process to return to the United States?
I missed fried chicken and iced tea, and no.
Well, you do. You still enjoy those.
I guess part of it was that I had some dear friends that were in Chicago, dear friends that are in the classical music field, and they lured me back to audition for the Lyric Opera of Chicago, which is a well-known opera house in the United States. And I think I was ready to come back.
And that ended up being sort of a life-changing experience. You were accomplished enough to be performing at a fantastic opera company, but you would have to, it wasn't a full-time job per se.
Right.
So what was that experience like? What were the challenges of it?
Well, that's you're working with the best of the best. We would have rehearsals in the afternoon and evenings. At my level, I was in the ensemble, so that would be getting small roles, but also being in the chorus. And you were getting, AGMA scale, so you're like